In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
Radio Hall of Fame Basketball. The first NBA radio for all the fans around the world. Radio Hall of Fame Basketball. We talk about NBA. We talk about passion. We are your radio.
In NBA history, to see what the standard is for massive off-season turnarounds, so we have something objective to measure current teams against. The greatest off-season turnaround of all time is undoubtedly the Boston Celtics of 2007 and 2008. At the end of the 2006-2007 season, the Celtics finished with a 24-58 record, earning them the final spot in the Eastern Conference, with only the 22-win Memphis Grizzlies finishing with a worse record. It was during the 2007 offseason that the then fresh Celtics Director of Basketball Operations, Danny Ainge, pulled off one of the most impressive NBA off-seasons in history. He lured a superstar player from the Minnesota Timberwolves in Kevin Garnett, who had just come off a 22 points per game and 13 rebounds per game season, as well as the Supersonics superstar Ray Allen, who had just put up a career high in points per game at 26.4 the previous season. Those two new players joined a prime Paul Pierce, who had established himself as one of the NBA's best scorers, having averaged over 20 points per game in 7 out of his first 9 seasons in the NBA. The massively revamped Celtics were primed to take a huge jump in their level of performance from the previous season, although some doubted how well they would gel as 3 elite scorers. Well, they went on to prove the doubters wrong, as Boston finished with the best record in the NBA at 66-16, as well as going on to win the 2008 NBA championship. Kevin Garnett won the Defensive Player of the Year award, and Boston's newly crowned Big Three used a balanced scoring attack and stingy defense to dominate the entire season. In doing so, they set the record for the largest increase in wins over 2 seasons for any NBA team, with 42 more wins, and they moved Boston on from the memories of the original Celtics Big Three of Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. So what can we take from the example of the Celtics? Well, it seems that the most improved team is likely to come from a non-playoff team who made significant roster changes in the offseason. It's very difficult for an elite team to add more wins even if they add more talent. We saw that with the Golden State Warriors last season. They finished with an NBA record 73 wins, but after adding a top 3 NBA player in Kevin Durant, their win total took a dive to 67. And without adding more talent, it's very difficult for non-playoff teams to change their fortunes. Relying on slight improvements from young players is rarely enough to add up to a big increase in wins. You need young players to improve, and you need to add talent through free agency or through trades. With all that in mind, let's take a look at the current NBA landscape. Looking at the Eastern Conference picture, it seems highly unlikely that any team will be able to repeat the 2007-2008 Celtics feat of winning 42 more games in the previous season. I think it's fair to eliminate most of the playoff teams from last year. Many teams from this group either got worse or look like they're about to get worse, like the Cavs, Hawks, Pacers, and Bulls. The Cavs are on track to lose All-Star Kyrie Irving, and the Pacers were forced to trade away their best player in Paul George. The Hawks lost their best player in Paul Millsap, who signed with the Denver Nuggets, and the Bulls organization pulled off one of the worst trades of the whole offseason by sending Jimmy Butler to Minnesota for an injured Zach LaVine and a small jump in the 2017 draft. For the remaining playoff teams who did not get significantly worse, they may well improve next year. The Raptors didn't make any significant changes, apart from the late addition of Serge Ibaka last year, so I don't see them as a threat to add many more wins. This is similar to the Wizards situation, and they didn't make any major changes either, so they may well improve slightly, but they aren't threatening to add much from the previous year. This leaves 2 teams from the playoff teams last year. Boston added great talent in Gordon Hayward and a high draft pick, Jason Tatum, but they did lose an all-defensive player in Avery Bradley. I definitely see them adding several more wins, as they have another year under head coach Brad Stevens, but they already won 53 games last year. They need 7 more wins to reach 60 wins, a goal that I think is within reach. The other team that I would watch in this competition to add wins would be the Milwaukee Bucks. While they didn't add any star players, much like the Raptors and the Wizards, they are the youngest out of these three teams, leading me to believe that they have the most room for improvement. Led by young Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Bucks roster is full of players poised to make improvements from the previous season. Thon Maker, Jabari Parker, and Malcolm Brogdon have all played under 3 years in the league, and as such we should expect improvements from each of them. I think Milwaukee will compete with Boston as the most improved team from last year's playoff teams, but I don't see them making a huge jump, like a 7 or 10 win jump. Looking at the 7 non-playoff teams, we can eliminate those who made no additions in the offseason or who got even worse. The Knicks are on a clear downward trend, and Carmelo Anthony looks to be on the way out. The Magic made no major additions, and their young stars like Aaron Gordon and Mario Hezonja haven't proven that they are ready to make a difference in their team's win column. Several of the non-playoff teams added some quality talent to their teams, including the Pistons, who added a great player in Avery Bradley. However, they did lose Marcus Morris, their starting power forward. Overall, I can't see the Pistons making a large improvement on their 37-win season last year. The Hornets are another team that added a player in Dwight Howard. However, Dwight hasn't really been a force in the court for several years now, and similar to the Pistons, I don't see the Hornets making a big jump from their 36-win season, unless rookie Malik Monk really surprises the league with his production. The Nets added a popular young player in D'Angelo Russell, but they lost a productive center in Brook Lopez, who joins Lonzo Ball in Los Angeles. Russell should put up big numbers for Brooklyn, but their team lacks any significant talent outside of him, with Jeremy Lin as the probable second best player on that team. This leaves the two most intriguing non-playoff teams, the 76ers and the Miami Heat. I think these are two of the hardest teams to predict in terms of record, but for different reasons. First, the Heat, who finished at 500 last year. The team started a dismal 11-30, but went on to reverse their record, finishing the season at 30-11, one of the best second halves of the season in the entire league last year. This massive jump leads me to believe that they will at least start the season better than they did last year. They added Bam Adebayo in the draft, a player who looked very good in Summer League due to his size, length, strength, and leaping ability. They retained all of their starters and their head coach Eric Spoelstra, so I think a big jump is within reach for the Heat, especially in the further weakened Eastern Conference. The final team in the East is the 76ers. Based on the health records of their two best players, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, it's hard to believe that their starting lineup will remain intact all year. However, having added the number 1 overall pick in Markelle Fultz, and with former number 1 overall pick Ben Simmons on course to return from foot surgery, I think it's fair to say that Philadelphia is primed to make a huge jump in the win column. Joel Embiid posted huge numbers when he was available last year, and with the addition of the elite shooter JJ Redick, it's hard to see any direction for the 76ers apart from up. The only thing holding them back is questions about health. In my opinion, if Embiid plays the majority of the season, then Philadelphia will be the most improved team in the Eastern Conference next year. They only won 28 games last year, but I think a 40-win season is a possibility for a healthy team. But it's so hard to have any conviction given how prone their stars are to injury. Before I get into the Western Conference picture, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button below, and make sure you subscribe if you enjoy videos like this one. If you've already subscribed, then consider turning on notifications for my channel. Moving to the Western Conference playoff team from last year, several teams lost key players and look like they will suffer a regression in the win column next year. The Clippers lost their best player in Chris Paul, although they added 2 good players in Danilo Gallinari and defensive star Patrick Beverley. At best, I think the Clippers reached their 50-win total like last year, but I don't see the possibility for much improvement. The Jazz lost their best player in Gordon Hayward without adding any top talent. Although their rookie Donovan Mitchell dominated the Summer League, he probably won't be helping the Jazz to an improved season, and I see them winning significantly fewer games next year. Several of the remaining playoff teams had uneventful off-seasons. The Grizzlies and the Trailblazers made no splashes in free agency, with the Grizzlies losing Zach Randolph, who filled their sixth-man role. Neither of these teams are poised to get a boost in the win column. Golden State looks like the favorite to win the West again, but their team remains mostly unchanged apart from the addition of Nick Young as a scorer off the bench. 67 wins last year was excellent, and they look poised to win between 65 and 70 wins again. So no big jump for Golden State. The same can be said for the Spurs, who will probably win around 60 games as they always seem to do. Their roster looks remarkably similar as it did to last year's one, with Kawhi Leonard leading the team offensively and defensively. This leaves the two most exciting Western Conference playoff teams to consider. First, the Rockets signed Chris Paul and only lost Patrick Beverley and some smaller assets. This is a definite upgrade at the point guard position, but not one that will push the Rockets over 60 wins in my opinion. However, Houston is supposedly Carmelo Anthony's first choice of teams to be traded to. If the Rockets can add Anthony and only lose a player like Ryan Anderson, they will become the most anticipated team next season, and quite possibly the second best squad behind Golden State, especially if Kyrie leaves the Cavs. In that scenario, I could see the Rockets winning well over 60 games and challenging to be the most improved team in the West. However, Carmelo hasn't actually been traded yet, so I can't go with this prediction definitively. Finally, Oklahoma City has rented Paul George on a short-term deal to see how well he fits with Russell Westbrook. Luckily, with the Thunder, we have some precedent that can help us predict how good they will be next season. In the 2015-2016 season, the Thunder starting five was mostly Russell Westbrook, Andre Roberson, Serge Ibaka, Kevin Durant, and Steven Adams. That year, they won 55 games. Their projected lineup this year, with the exact same head coach, is Russell Westbrook, Andre Roberson, Paul George, Patrick Patterson or Jeremy Grant, and Steven Adams. Paul George is a slight downgrade from Kevin Durant, and Patrick Peterson or Jeremy Grant are also slight downgrades from the 2015 Serge Ibaka that we saw, who played outstanding defense with the Thunder. Westbrook, Roberson, and Adams are the same players who have presumably improved slightly over the past 2 years with added experience. Therefore, I think a realistic goal for Oklahoma City next year is pretty much the same as their 2015 season, 55 wins. The top of the Western Conference is stacked, so I don't see OKC breaking into the top 3 or 4 teams, but they certainly will add wins compared to last year, if all goes well. Looking at the teams that missed out on the playoffs last year, in the Western Conference, there are quite a few teams that added significant talent in the offseason. Several of these teams had high draft picks and took players who looked like future superstars. However, the key word here is future, and we have seen in recent years that top college players struggle to make an impact in the win column for their team in their first few years in the NBA. Even Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, 2 first overall picks, have failed to reverse Minnesota's playoff woes in their first 2 and 3 years in the league. This means that I have limited expectations for teams like the Dallas Mavericks and Phoenix Suns. Dallas drafted an amazing rookie athlete in Dennis Smith Jr., but didn't really do much else in the offseason as they continue to rebuild while Dirk moves toward retirement. The Suns also drafted top athlete Josh Jackson, but didn't really add many other players. Jackson is a project player who won't make a big difference in the win column for the first few years, but will likely do so in the future if he can develop as they hope. For now, I'm happy to take Dallas and Phoenix off the list. The Kings and Lakers are different because they added valuable veterans as well as top draft picks. The Kings took De'Aaron Fox in the draft, as well as Justin Jackson, both of whom are promising players. They also signed Zach Randolph and Vince Carter. Unfortunately, Randolph's season looks to be in jeopardy after his recent arrest, so I'm limiting my expectations for the Kings to just a small increase over their 32 wins last season. The Lakers will be one of the most scrutinized teams next year because they drafted Lonzo Ball with the 2nd overall pick. Lonzo shined in the Summer League, which bodes well for his first NBA season. However, unlike the Suns and the Mavericks, the Lakers also traded for a top veteran player in Brook Lopez. The starting 5 now looks like a respectable NBA team, with Brandon Ingram always a threat to lead the team in scoring in his 2nd year. The Lakers have another thing on their side, which is that they only won 26 games last year, making it far easier to see them adding wins next season. Is 40 wins too much to expect from the revamped Lakers team? Perhaps, but I wouldn't be overly surprised to see them get close to that mark if Brook Lopez can stay healthy all year and Lonzo Ball averages close to 10 assists as many people expect he might do. The remaining 3 teams didn't add splashes through the draft, but rather through free agency or trades. The Nuggets added perennial all-star Paul Millsap to start at the power forward spot. In addition, they are loaded with young talent including Nikola Jokic, Emmanuel Mudiay, and Jamal Murray. With these 3 players poised to take a step forward in their games, and with some skilled veterans, I can definitely see the Nuggets surprising a lot of people next year. They won 40 games last season and just missed out on the playoffs, but a goal of 45 wins and the 7th or 8th seed is definitely reasonable in my opinion. One of the most intriguing teams to watch next year might be the New Orleans Pelicans. They re-signed Drew Holiday, who has missed a significant portion of games in his career so far for various reasons. However, he looks to be healthy and finished last season averaging 15.4 points and 7.3 assists per game. The Pelicans also added Rajon Rondo, who's not the player we saw with the stacked Celtics roster earlier in his career. However, in the playoffs, he proved to be a vital member of the Bulls starting 5, and may well perform now that he is surrounded by talent. Having added All-NBA big man DeMarcus Cousins late last year, the Pelicans will have something to prove now they have had time to prepare together. However, even with Cousins, Holiday, and Anthony Davis playing on the floor last year, the Pelicans were still below 500. Will the addition of Rondo be enough to push them above 500? I think it might be close, but I don't think the Pelicans are poised to win well over 41 games next year, limiting how high I can put them in this list of teams adding wins. The final team I'm going to look at is the Minnesota Timberwolves, my pick to be the most improved team from last season to next season. They signed arguably the top free agent who is being shopped by their own team, Jimmy Butler. Last year, Butler averaged 23.9 points, 6.2 rebounds, and 5.5 assists, making the All-NBA third team as well as the All-Defensive second team. The Timberwolves also got rid of their struggling point guard Ricky Rubio, who has failed to improve his offensive game due to his horrific shooting. Instead of Rubio, the Wolves will start Jeff Teague, a proven veteran point guard who has won playoff games in the past with the Hawks. He averaged 15 points and 8 assists last year with the Pacers, and is also an above-average defender. Although the Wolves lack serious depth in their bench, they do have an aging Jamal Crawford, a young Tyus Jones, and Taj Gibson if he doesn't start over Gorgui Dieng. I do think that their starting 5 will be too much to handle for many teams, as they are all elite athletes who are capable shooters from deep. Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns have had excellent statistical output so far in their careers, but they haven't been able to win games due to a lack of veteran talent around them. The Wolves management rectified this with their off-season maneuvers, and under Tom Thibodeau, the Timberwolves should be able to raise their defensive numbers with good defenders in Butler, Teague, and Towns. With only 31 wins last year, the question is how many more wins will Minnesota achieve next year? Comparing them to last year's Clipper or Jazz, they look on paper to be a better team, leading me to believe that 50 wins is well within reach for them next season. 51 wins would give them 20 additional wins over last season, clearly making them the team with the biggest potential jump in wins from last season.
Is your ticket to all of this season's action. Every exciting matchup. Every incredible shot. Every big moment. Every game live and on demand in HD quality on every type of device. Wherever you are, whenever you want. NBA League Pass has you covered. Sign up today.
All right, come on, it's game time. Let's do this. Here we go. Here we go.
Here they come.
This is gonna be good.
Watch out for the crossover. Look at that handle.
That's what I'm talking about.
He wants you to right, close and left. Take him down.
Oh, come on!
Watch your back. Watch your back.
Setting him up. He's gonna spin.
Woo! Time out. Time out.
Nobody panic.
What do you got, baby?
Gotta go. Gotta go. I can't watch this.
5, 4, 3,
2.
Take the action with you. NBA League Pass 5 games wherever you are.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
Radio Hall of Fame Basketball. The first NBA radio for all the fans around the world. Radio Hall of Fame Basketball. We talk about NBA. We talk about passion. We are your radio.